Kang Min-ho stared at the holographic contract floating above his desk in the cramped space station office. The pay was triple his usual rate, which immediately made him suspicious. Good money always came with bad problems in his line of work. He had spent 8 years protecting corporate executives and wealthy traders across the outer colonies, but this job was different. This time, his client was famous across half the galaxy. Valina was a Trilaxian pop star whose concerts could fill entire space stations. Her people had crystalline blue skin that shifted colors with their emotions and 4 graceful arms that moved like liquid mercury when she performed. Humans called her music hypnotic, though Minho had never bothered listening to any of it. He preferred the simple guitar songs from old Earth that reminded him of home. The meeting location was a luxury hotel on Nexus Prime, the kind of place where a single meal cost more than most people earned in a month. Minho arrived early, wearing his best suit and checking the exits out of habit. His military training never really left him, even 3 years after retiring from Earth Special Forces. The lobby was filled with alien species he barely recognized, all dressed in expensive clothes and speaking in hushed, important voices. When Valina finally appeared, she moved through the crowd like she owned the entire station. Her skin glowed a soft purple, which Minho remembered meant confidence in Trilaxian body language. She was smaller than he expected, barely reaching his shoulder, but she carried herself like someone who had never heard the word no. 2 of her 4 hands held a tablet displaying her schedule, while the other 2 gestured as she spoke rapidly to her assistant. Their first conversation went exactly as Minho had feared. Valina looked him up and down like she was examining a piece of equipment, not hiring a person to potentially die for her. She asked about his qualifications in a bored tone, then complained that the agency had sent her a human instead of a Zephyrian warrior or a Korgan battle specialist. Minho explained his experience protecting high-value targets in hostile environments, but she seemed more interested in the color of his uniform than his actual skills. The worst part was how she treated him during their first week together. Valina acted like he was invisible, walking ahead without warning him about schedule changes or destination shifts. She would disappear into private rooms for hours without telling him where she was going. When he tried to explain basic security protocols, she would wave him away with one of her 4 hands, while continuing whatever conversation she was having with someone else. During their 3rd day together, Minho watched Valina rehearse for an upcoming concert. Despite his annoyance with her attitude, he had to admit she was incredibly talented. Her voice could hit notes that made the air itself seem to vibrate, and when she moved, it looked like she was dancing with invisible partners. The backup musicians, all from different alien species, followed her lead perfectly. Even the stage technicians stopped their work to watch her perform, but talent did not excuse rudeness. When Valina snapped her fingers at him like he was a servant, expecting him to carry her bags while she chatted with reporters, Minho seriously considered breaking his contract. The only thing that stopped him was remembering why he had taken this job in the first place. The money would let him buy his own ship and maybe return to Earth for the first time in 5 years. He just had to survive a few more weeks of being treated like expensive furniture. Station Omega-7 was packed beyond its safety limits. Thousands of alien fans had traveled from across 3 star systems just to see Valina perform live. The concert hall buzzed with excitement as creatures of every shape and size found their seats. Minho positioned himself at the side of the stage, scanning the crowd through his tactical visor. Something felt wrong, but he could not put his finger on what exactly. The opening act finished to thunderous applause, and the lights dimmed for Valina's entrance. She appeared in a shower of holographic sparkles, her crystalline skin now glowing bright gold with performance energy. The crowd went absolutely wild. Minho had seen her rehearse dozens of times, but even he had to admit this was impressive. Her forearms moved in perfect harmony as she sang, creating visual patterns that matched her otherworldly voice. But Minho was not watching the show. His eyes swept the audience methodically, looking for anything out of place. Near the back section, he spotted 3 figures in dark hooded cloaks who had not cheered once during the entire performance. They sat perfectly still while everyone around them danced and sang along. Their positioning formed a triangle that gave them clear sight lines to different parts of the stage. Minho activated his communication device and tried to contact the head of station security. The reply came back garbled with static interference. He switched to the backup channel and reached Velina's personal security team, but they brushed off his concerns. The lead guard, a massive Korgan warrior named Thox, told him to stop being paranoid and let the professionals handle crowd control. The suspicious figures were now moving. They stood up simultaneously and began walking toward different sections closer to the stage. Minho felt his old military instincts kicking in as adrenaline flooded his system. He tried the communication channels again, but now all of them were being jammed. Someone had planned this very carefully. Velina was halfway through her most popular song when the attack began. 3 energy weapons fired at once from different angles, their bright blue beams cutting through the concert hall air. The first shot missed her by inches, leaving a smoking hole in the backdrop behind the stage. The second beam shattered a bank of stage lights, sending sparks and debris raining down on the musicians. Chaos erupted instantly. Thousands of concert-goers screamed and pushed toward the exits, creating a stampede that knocked over barriers and crushed merchandise stands. The station's emergency alarms began blaring, adding to the confusion. Security guards ran in every direction, shouting orders that nobody could hear over the noise. Minho did not hesitate. While everyone else was running away from the danger, he sprinted directly toward it. Velina stood frozen on the stage, her skin flickering between colors as fear and confusion overwhelmed her natural emotional controls. She was completely exposed, an easy target for the next wave of energy blasts that were already charging up. He reached her, just as the third shooter fired again. Minho wrapped his arms around Velina and threw both of them behind the massive amplifier equipment at the back of the stage. His shoulder slammed hard against the metal casing, but his body absorbed the impact that would have seriously injured her smaller frame. Plasma fire scorched the air where she had been standing just seconds before. More energy blasts followed, each one getting closer as the attackers adjusted their aim. Minho pressed Velina down against the floor, using his own body as a human shield, while debris from destroyed equipment rained down around them. For the first time since he had met her, Velina was completely quiet, her 4 hands gripping his jacket as she realized how close she had come to dying. The medical bay on Station Omega-7 smelled like antiseptic and burnt metal. Velina sat on the examination table, her crystalline skin flickering between pale blue and gray as the station's doctor checked her for injuries. She had not spoken a word since the attack ended 20 minutes ago. Her 4 hands trembled slightly, something that never happened during her performances, no matter how demanding the choreography. Minho stood near the door, ignoring the medic who was trying to treat the cuts on his arms from the flying debris. His eyes kept moving between the hallway entrance and Velina, still in protective mode, even though the immediate danger had passed. Station security had finally captured the 3 shooters, but he trusted nothing and no one right now. Velina's manager, a nervous Trilaxian named Jorik, paced back and forth across the small medical room. His skin showed the orange patches that meant extreme stress in his species. He kept muttering calculations about cancelled shows, lost revenue and insurance claims. But every few minutes he would stop and stare at Minho with an expression that mixed surprise and grudging respect. The most shocking part for everyone was how completely Velina's own security team had failed. Thox, the supposedly elite Korgan warrior, had been caught completely off guard when the shooting started. Instead of protecting his client, he had taken cover and waited for station security to handle the situation. The other 2 guards on her team had simply run when the energy weapons started firing. But Minho, the human they had all dismissed as barely qualified, had been the only one to actually do his job. While trained warriors froze or fled, he had thrown himself directly into danger without a second thought. Jorik was already calculating how much more money they should have been paying him. Velina finally broke her silence when the doctor finished his examination. She turned to look directly at Minho, her large eyes focusing on his face for the first time since they had met. Her Voice came out smaller and quieter than he had ever heard it before. "You could have been killed," she said in accented Standard Galactic. "Those energy weapons would have cut through your body just as easily as mine." Minho shrugged, which was apparently not the response she expected. "That is what you hired me for," he replied simply. "To keep you safe, even if it means getting hurt myself." This concept seemed to genuinely confuse her. Trilaxians were logical creatures who made decisions based on mathematical probability and personal benefit. The idea of deliberately accepting harm to protect someone else, especially someone who had treated you poorly, did not compute with their cultural programming. Over the next few days, as they traveled to a safer location, Valina began studying. Minho-like, he was a fascinating puzzle she needed to solve. She watched how he checked every room before she entered it, how he positioned himself between her and potential threats, how he stayed alert even during long, boring travel hours when nothing was happening. What impressed her most was his consistency. Unlike her previous guards, who had treated protection duty like an easy paycheck, Minho approached every moment with the same serious focus. He did not relax just because they were in supposedly safe areas. He did not get distracted by attractive aliens or entertainment options. He definitely did not spend his time trying to impress her or ask for autographs like some of her other human employees had done. During one hyperspace journey, she caught him reading tactical manuals instead of watching the entertainment programs that everyone else enjoyed. When she asked why, he explained that staying sharp meant constant learning and preparation. This level of dedication was something her own species simply did not possess. The passenger liner, Starweaver, was 3 days into hyperspace when Valina first approached Minho during his off-duty hours. He was sitting alone in the observation lounge, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the reinforced windows while eating a simple meal from the ship's cafeteria. Most passengers found hyperspace travel boring, but Minho seemed perfectly content with the solitude. Valina hesitated at the entrance to the lounge. In the week since the attack, she had begun to see her human bodyguard differently. He was not the primitive brute she had initially assumed all humans to be. There was something quietly intelligent about the way he observed everything around him, like he was constantly learning and adapting. "May I sit here?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from his table. Her skin showed the pale green of uncertainty, an emotion she rarely displayed in public. Minho looked up from his meal and nodded. "It is your ship," he said, with that same straightforward tone he used for everything. But this time, Valina caught something that might have been humor in his voice. She settled into the chair, folding her forearms in a way that her species used to show relaxation. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, both watching the hypnotic patterns outside the window. Finally, Valina gathered enough courage to ask the question that had been bothering her for days. "What is Earth music actually like?" she asked. "I have heard humans describe it, but I have never experienced it directly." Minho's expression softened slightly, which was the most emotion she had seen from him since they met. He pulled out a small personal device and connected it to the lounge's audio system. "This was my grandmother's favorite song," he said, selecting a file. "She used to play it every morning while making breakfast. The music that filled the room was unlike anything Valina had ever heard. It was simple compared to the complex harmonic structures her species created, but there was something raw and honest about it that touched her in an unexpected way. A human voice sang about missing someone far from home, accompanied by an acoustic guitar that seemed to echo with loneliness and hope at the same time. "It is so—" She struggled to find the right words in Standard Galactic. "So full of feeling, but the structure is completely different from ours." Minho smiled, which transformed his usually serious face completely. "Human music is not about mathematical perfection," he explained. "It is about expressing emotions that are too big or too complicated for regular words." Intrigued, Valina stood up and moved to the center of the lounge. "Let me show you what Trilaxian music can do," she said. Her skin began to glow with soft silver light as she took a deep breath. When she began to sing, the air itself seemed to change. Her voice created harmonies that should have been impossible for a single person to produce, weaving melodies that directly affected the emotional centers of anyone listening. Minho felt waves of peace, then excitement, then a deep sense of connection to something larger than himself. But what surprised him most was that her song seemed to be responding to the human music still playing softly in the background. Instead of replacing it, her harmonies wrapped around the simple guitar melody, creating something entirely new that belonged to neither species alone. When she finished, they both stood in amazed silence. Something had just happened that neither of them fully understood, but both recognized as significant. "Your music tells stories," Velina said softly. "Ours creates feelings, but together they do both," Minho finished. The emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows as Minho crept through the ship's corridors at 3 in the morning. His bare feet made no sound on the cold metal floor as he moved toward the source of the disturbance that had woken him from deep sleep. Something had triggered his combat instincts even before he was fully conscious, and 8 years of military training had taught him to trust those feelings completely. The Starweaver should have been completely safe during hyperspace travel. No other ships could intercept them, and the crew had been thoroughly screened before departure. But someone had managed to disable the main power systems and life support controls. The ship was running on emergency power only, which meant the security cameras and automatic defense systems were offline. Minho pressed himself against the wall as he heard footsteps echoing from the deck above. At least 3 people, moving with purpose rather than panic. Passengers would be confused and scared by the power failure, but these footsteps belonged to people who knew exactly what they were doing. They were heading directly toward the VIP section where Velina had her private quarters. He reached his own room and quickly grabbed the emergency kit he always kept packed. Inside were basic weapons that security regulations allowed bodyguards to carry on civilian transports. A plasma knife, 2 stun grenades, and a small energy pistol with limited charges. Not much against professional assassins, but better than fighting with his bare hands. The corridor leading to Velina's section was completely dark, except for the dim red emergency lighting. Minho moved carefully, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The ship's artificial gravity was fluctuating, making movement unpredictable. Whoever had planned this attack understood ship systems very well. He heard Velina scream. All caution disappeared as Minho sprinted down the hallway toward her quarters. The door had been forced open, its electronic lock system sparking from where someone had overridden it with military-grade equipment. Through the doorway he could see Velina backed against the far wall of her room, her skin flashing between terror white and anger red as she faced 3 armed figures in dark combat gear. The nearest assassin noticed Minho's approach and spun around, raising a plasma rifle. Minho dove low, rolling across the floor as energy blasts scorched the air above his head. He came up behind a piece of furniture and immediately threw his first stun grenade toward the group. The blast filled the room with blinding light and deafening sound. In the confusion that followed, Minho tackled the closest attacker, using his plasma knife to disable the alien's weapon, before striking him unconscious with a precise blow to the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. The second assassin was already recovering from the stun grenade, swinging a plasma blade in wide arcs that could cut through hull metal. Minho grabbed a metal chair and used it as a shield, the superheated energy leaving glowing cuts in the furniture as he maneuvered closer. When he got within range, he kicked the assassin's legs out from under him and disabled him with another nerve strike, but the third attacker had been using the fight as a distraction. While Minho dealt with the others, this one had grabbed Velina and was holding a plasma blade against her throat. Her 4 arms were pinned behind her back, and her skin had gone completely white with fear. "Drop your weapons, human," the assassin hissed in accented Standard Galactic, "or she dies right now." Minho slowly placed his plasma knife on the floor, but his eyes never left the assassin's face. He was calculating distances and angles, looking for any opportunity to act without getting Velina killed. The opportunity came when the ship's gravity fluctuated again. For just a moment, everyone in the room felt slightly weightless. Minho threw himself forward, pushing Velina away from her captor while grabbing for the plasma blade. The weapon sliced deep into his shoulder as he twisted to protect her, but his momentum carried both him and the assassin to the floor. The ship's medical bay was barely functional, with only emergency power running through the systems. Most of the automated healing equipment was offline, leaving only basic supplies and whatever natural abilities the passengers possessed. Minho lay on the examination table, his shoulder wrapped in temporary bandages that were already soaked through with blood. The plasma blade had cut deeper than he initially realized, and the wound was not healing properly on its own. Valina paced nervously around the small room, her skin cycling through worried shades of blue and purple. The ship's human medic had done what he could, but he was trained for basic injuries, not combat wounds from energy weapons. They were still 2 days away from the nearest medical station, and Minho was getting weaker by the hour. There might be another way, Valina said quietly, stopping her pacing to look at him directly. My people have natural healing abilities, but I have never tried them on a human before. Minho turned his head toward her, his face pale but alert. What kind of healing abilities? He asked, though his voice was weaker than usual. Valina's skin shifted to the pale green of uncertainty. We can share life energy through direct contact, but it requires a deep mental connection. It is very personal for my species. We only do it with family members, or... She trailed off, not finishing the sentence. Or what? Minho pressed. Or bonded partners, she admitted, her skin darkening with embarrassment. But you will die if we do nothing, and I cannot let that happen. Not after you saved my life twice. Minho nodded slowly. Do what you need to do. Valina approached the medical table hesitantly. Her healing abilities required skin-to-skin contact and complete mental openness between both participants. She had never attempted this with someone from another species, and she had no idea what might happen when their minds connected. She placed her 4 hands on different parts of his body, one on his forehead, one over his heart, and 2 on either side of the plasma wound. Her skin began to glow with soft silver light as she activated the bioregeneration process that was natural to all Trilaxians. The connection hit them both like an electric shock. Suddenly, Valina was experiencing Minho's memories as if they were her own. She saw Earth through his eyes, vast blue oceans and green continents that seemed impossibly vibrant compared to the crystal cities of her homeworld. She felt his childhood memories of playing in forests that stretched beyond the horizon, something unimaginable to someone who had grown up in enclosed spaces. But then came the darker memories. She experienced his military service, felt the weight of weapons in his hands, and the responsibility of protecting fellow soldiers who had become like brothers to him. She lived through battles on distant worlds where humans fought not for conquest or glory, but to protect people they had never met from threats they barely understood. What confused her most were the moments when he had chosen to risk everything for others. During an evacuation mission on a mining colony, she felt his determination to go back into a collapsing tunnel system to rescue trapped workers, even though his orders were to retreat. She experienced his willingness to take a sniper's bullet, meant for a wounded comrade, and his decision to volunteer for the most dangerous assignments so that younger soldiers could return home to their families. Her species made decisions based on logic and personal benefit. But humans seemed to operate on something else entirely, a deep need to protect others that went beyond rational thought. Even when it made no sense, even when it cost them everything, they kept fighting for people who could never repay them. The healing process was working. She could feel Minho's cellular structure responding to her bioenergy, the plasma wound closing and regenerating healthy tissue. But the mental connection was becoming stronger, not weaker. She was seeing deeper, into his mind, understanding not just what he had done, but why he had chosen this path. The datapad trembled in Valina's 4 hands as she stared at the encrypted files Minho had managed to recover from the assassin's equipment. Her skin had gone completely white, then shifted to a sickly yellow, color that Minho had never seen before. According to the documents displayed on the screen, everything she believed about her life had been a carefully constructed lie. The assassination attempts were not random attacks by extremist groups who hated her message of unity. They were planned and funded by Stellar Entertainment, her own record label, the same company that had discovered her as a young performer, that had made her famous across 12 star systems, that had promised to protect her from the dangers. That came with galactic celebrity status. "Look at this," Valina whispered, pointing to a financial transfer record with one of her shaking hands. "They paid the attackers on Station Omega-7 exactly 48 hours before my concert. And here, another payment just before we boarded the Starweaver." Minho leaned closer to read the details, his jaw tightening as he understood the full scope of the betrayal. The attacks had been designed to fail, but only barely. Close enough to create genuine fear and massive media attention, but not close. Enough to actually kill their most profitable star. Every near-death experience had been carefully calculated to generate maximum publicity. "The concert ticket sales after the first attack," Valina continued, scrolling through more files. "They increased by 300% within 24 hours. The media coverage was worth millions in free advertising. And my latest album sales..." She could not finish the sentence. The realization that her own people had been willing to risk her life for profit was too overwhelming. Everything she had worked for, every relationship she had built in the entertainment industry, had been based on manipulation and greed. Minho watched her struggle with the truth, feeling helpless, in a way that combat had never made him feel. He could fight assassins and protect her from physical threats, but he could not shield her from the emotional pain of discovering that everyone she trusted had betrayed her. "There is more," he said gently, pulling up another set of files. "They have been monitoring all of your communications, tracking your location constantly, and they have bribes flowing to security officials on every station you visit. This operation goes much deeper than just fake assassination attempts." Valina's skin shifted to deep red, the Trilaxian color for pure rage. "They have been controlling my entire life," she said, her voice becoming stronger as anger replaced shock. "My tour schedule, my song choices, even the interviews I give. They created a character and made me perform it, and I was too naive to realize what was happening. But the worst revelation was still to come. According to the internal communications Minho had decrypted, Stellar Entertainment was planning to escalate the fake attacks. The next attempt would involve actual casualties among her fans and crew members. They were willing to let innocent people die to maintain the illusion of genuine danger around their star performer. "We have to stop them," Valina said, standing up from the small table in their hiding place aboard a freight transport. "But I do not know who we can trust. Everyone I know in the industry could be part of this."